So I don't know where this is going to go next week, what we'll be meditating on, but I know this has been a week of scripture that have meant something to me over the years, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So I want to close out the week with one more along the same theme. This week started with number 15, and it's just been really refreshing to me. And I think the sum total of those scriptures put together, I've realized how much God really used His Word to shape my inner world. I was so hungry to get a bearing on reality, and I understood that His Word was the portal into that reality, that spiritual, invisible truth of the universe. And so I just began to dig into that in my 20s. And this last week, has been a refreshing of some of those concepts. Not that they've ever left me, they've always been a part of my life, expanding and growing, as well as being the root. The stability. One meaning of the word radical, as we talk about radical Christianity, is a return to the root. Radical has to do with the root of things. So it's really often such a healthy thing to do to refresh your roots. So I want to add in a couple of thoughts today. One is Isaiah 12:3, which says, "With joy you will draw water from the wells or springs of salvation." And that kind of capsulizes what we've said all week long, which is the fact that the life of God deposited in you is so big. Why would you use any of your own strength time to use your soul, to work on your soul, to generate some good feelings or good attitudes or good works? In other words, you don't have to do any of this stuff in your own self-effort. God deposited His very life in you at salvation, and with joy, you will draw water out of the wells of salvation inside you. Now, why wouldn't we do that? I submit to you that the reason is some of us have an overactive soul, and we're so plugged in, our sensory input nodes are so plugged into the world around us, especially at a crisis time like this, that we are more aware of what's going on out there because it's loud than we are of our spiritual streams inside. And that reminds me of Galatians chapter 5, which is the familiar passage about the fruits of the Spirit. And if you grew up in church at all, you would have heard this. It's a frequent Sunday school lesson for kids to memorize the fruits of the Spirit: love, peace, joy, gentleness, all those things, moderation. Patience is a fruit of the Spirit. It's not something that you go through things to get. You may need to exercise the well of salvation that is patience inside you when you go through something, but it's put in you by God. It's not something that bleeds out of you through any kind of external torture. Why would our own patience be anything? It's God's life in you manifesting. Well, in Galatians 5, it's a fascinating passage because it talks about the flesh and the spirit, and it says walk in the spirit and you won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. And then when it talks about the flesh, it says in verse 19, now the works of the flesh are manifest, is the King James word. The Greek is phaneros. It's also translated evident. In other words, one translation says obvious. So it's saying, before it lists this long list of works of the flesh, which includes idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, drunkenness, orgies. So these wild works of the flesh are listed right along with envy and rage and jealousy and things that we all struggle with in trying times when our soul gets worked up, when our emotions get worked up. But it says the works of the flesh, that long list, are evident, are obvious, are manifest. I'm going to take the liberty of translating that word phaneros, in your face. Now the works of the flesh are in your face. Long list of works of the flesh. Then the next verse says, but the fruit of the Spirit is. And then the long list of the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And it says, against such things there is no law. In other words, the law can't block those things. Whereas in the works of the flesh, the law says don't do it, and the flesh says watch me. But the fruit of the Spirit, once you enter into the Spirit, against such there is no law, because you have sequestered yourself into the realm of the Spirit where you're producing the life of God in you. The works of the flesh are manifest. The fruit of the Spirit is. And that right there is why we don't tune in more often to the wells of salvation that are inside us. Because the works of the flesh are loud and in your face. Our temptation to rage, to be frustrated, to have a fit of anger, all those temptations are loud and blustery, and we feel them. But all the while, the fruit of the Spirit is. Just like the road not taken, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by, the quiet road, the fruit of the Spirit that is. That just abides waiting, abides ready, abides peacefully inside us. So, once again, the fruit of the Spirit, the work of the Spirit, the life of God inside us is like Moses' burning bush. It is off the beaten path. It is a sign. It is a wonder. It is a bush consumed, not consumed, burning, but not consumed, consumed with fire, but not being consumed. The burning bush is the life of God inside us. And all of us daily can take the moment to choose to turn aside and see. The burning bush is in us. And we can daily turn aside and see this great sight, that the great things that are called forth from us, endurance and patience and joy and hope in troubled times, all of those things are actually already planted in us. We don't have to go work for them. We don't have to work them up. We don't have to hype them up. We don't have to supply them in our own strength. We don't even have to choose hard enough. The works of the flesh are the loud, pressurized things. The loud, forced, pressurized things are the works of the flesh. But the fruit of the Spirit is. And when you listen to the list, love, joy, peace, gentleness, patience, endurance. The fruit of the Spirit is abiding inside you. The life of God inside you has what you need. The life of God inside you is your hope. It is whatever you need. So you just, with joy, draw water. What's the joy? The joy is that the water's already there. Draw water out of the wells of salvation inside you. The works of the flesh are manifest in your face, but the fruit of the Spirit still is. And you can daily, hourly, by minute, turn aside and see and receive from what already is living inside you.